Right, this is going to be another episode of the Best Damn League Show. Our guest for this one is obviously Jensen Goh, who is a return guest. You actually might be the person who's appeared on the Best Damn League Show the most. I'm not certain. There's some other people who will be up there, but you're definitely not. Now, one thing actually we didn't explicitly mention last time, though, Jensen, I just did that whole preamble about you're not Jensen Team Liquid and blah, 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 that famous time where there was a confusion on Discord or whatever. But there's actually a detail a lot of people might not be aware of, or they might not have just put two and two together, which is you two used to work together, right? He was like, what was he, like a remote coach or something, Peter, when you were in Splice?
Yeah, no, he was there on site.
Right.
Like, he was basically doing a lot of work with Splice Vipers and then some work with the main team. And this was the 2019 Splice that got to the World's quarterfinals. So he was there. Yeah, during the season, during the summer season. I don't think you were there. You were there at the end of spring, but I think mainly working with the academy team in spring and with the. No.
Yeah, I was working with the academy team for spring. Then I was doing positional coaching for bot lane. Exactly. Then I was I was helping out the main team throughout playoffs and polls.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, it was very, very useful because, of course, Worlds back in those days, you had a lot of East Asian teams, and
for sure.
I would say there was no team in Europe that was better prepared for J Team, who were actually pretty fucking good.
So wait a minute. I hadn't even put that together. Wait a minute. So when you had that bullshit group that was like FPX, Splice, and then it was like J Team and then GAM or something, you had the secret weapon. You actually had the people who, unlike everyone else, had no clue who J Team were. You had you actually had the reconnaissance, I see, right?
Exactly.
Right.
We did. But also, like I think J Team that year were really, really good.
Yeah, they were.
So people didn't watch that region, so we were actually kind of scared about J Team. Like we were not really afraid of the American teams because they were so like if that year like the American teams in 2019 were some of the worst teams I've ever seen, but J Team were good, especially. Yeah, I think that year.
It will also always just be bizarre to me that we live in a world where Splice, Fnatic, and J-Team beat FPX, but then G2 got 3-0'd, which is like, what? But whatever, that's just the nature of the game, boys. That's the nature of the game. So anyway, Jensen, we always have the guest begin. So in our new format, you actually did do one of these. What is your good point? What's good to talk about in LEC at the moment?
Well, whenever I come on these shows, whenever I come on the show, I always shield BDS, and I think that this episode with that win over G2 is going to be, I feel like I'm obligated to come in there and say that Striker is easily, if not number one, at least in contention for best coach in the LEC right now, right? Whenever you watch his teams play, they always punch above their weight. They always come together in a coherent manner. And in terms of the way that I understand and the way that I see the game, it always checks off all the boxes, right? Whenever we talk about BDS, it's always a player being too aggressive and then wasting all these opportunities that they have. I liked the little bit of cynicism that they had going into this G2 series and saying that, okay, we're going to play a scaling composition over here, and we're going to use the fact that we understand how to reset the map from a position that's behind to ensure that we're never completely out of it. And then there was some very key engages from 113. They got the team fighting compositions online and they won the game at like 40 minutes and stuff like that, right? Now that the games are generally going a longer period as well. So I think that's going to be my good point. BDS, very impressive. I think that this is one of the challenges as well as a coach who likes to coach this two-lane approach towards the game. It always feels very unnatural to give up the agency and then go for more of the scaling drafts. But if you understand how to play the map on two lanes and you just have enough agency and the ability to retake control of the map, you can then draft these scaling team compositions and then use it to then cynically win games and then beat teams that are on paper supposed to be at least double, three times better than you.
Are you gonna who are we blaming / crediting for bringing in 113 then? Are you a 113 fan or a 113 hater? Because we had Gilius on the show last week, and he's a big 113 hater. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on
where you at then?
This year.
Well, the last time I came on the show, I said 113 is the reason why they're ending up in all these problems, right? Where you live and die by 113, and this is one of those situations where if we are going to flame him for the times where he just goes in and unnecessarily throws the game because they have Baron buff stacked in 2 waves and all he needs to do is wait for the AD carry to hit it, then we have to give him credit for when he goes in and finds the engage on Hansa and wins the game for them, right?
That's fair. I mean, my thoughts on this are basically like BDS had a very impressive series against G2. I've got a G2 point later, but basically, I agree actually with a lot of what Jensen's saying about the map setups that they use to kind of keep themselves in games. I worry with this team about how they play from ahead, but they weren't playing from ahead this week. And I think basically, if you're playing from ahead and you are the team that needs to snowball the game and you have like a 5k gold lead, then every mistake you make, you're going to give shutdown gold. You're going to give opponents the ability to stall later into the game, get their items and things like this. So every mistake you make with a snowballing composition looks much, much worse. But if you're 1-1-3 and you're playing like high risk, high reward kind of style, and your team is behind anyway, you're going to lose the game anyway if you don't get the good engage, then maybe this is a better way for BDS to play. Maybe they should stop playing to try to snowball games and just play to stall out the game and just rely on their individual mechanics, which is definitely what they did this week. But yeah, I agree Strike is a good coach. I think that this roster is sometimes hard for him to show what he wants. Or like I can see the evidence of the styles that his teams have used in the past, but I don't see the consistency. But definitely the series against G2 was they were good, right? Like they were good at playing from behind, for sure.
It's funny because normally BDS is the team in the LEC that tortures me the most because they're the team that, like, I don't think any team, people meme about like Fnatic throwing. Bro, I don't think I've seen any team this year throw as many games as BDS. Like, they even tried to throw some of the ones they win. It's just the opponent can't catch the fucking throw. It's like the Heretics versus KC series where, like, you probably should have been Heretics winning, but they just didn't have the firepower to do it. Like, the crazy thing is, so normally you might think that I would flame the coaches, but I'm with you actually, Jensen. I think Striker just fucking kills it, mate. Because whenever I look at these rosters, what I always remember is this. Think of the expectations you have when you see the first striker rosters that you see in each of these years. Like, you never come off an off-season like, oh, he's cooked it. He should be like top 2 pro. Like, no, like you always are like, let's see how this works out. Like, it's a bit interesting he stuck with this guy or he went with this person instead. You notice he's very rarely ever getting big names either. Like, he's either getting like reclaimed names from elsewhere, Labrov, fucking people like that, Crowny. They weren't like top players that people wanted elsewhere. They were sort of considered surplus to requirements. He's either taking those players, and you notice, by the way, when they work with him, they become the best in the league at their position. Then the others, he's always getting players that like don't get rated that highly, and he's actually like sort of getting more out of them than you'd expect. Like, you look at the squad, like I actually think, by the way, that's why in some ways his success and his failure will be tied to 1-1-3 this year, because I don't think anyone else in his position would have given that player a go, but it's obviously his boy from years ago, so he's sort of like thinking like, I understand him in a way others don't. And I think he's actually right, mate. Like, I actually do think you've seen the best and the worst of 1-1-3 this split. And by the way, this series, this is why I did all the preamble. They're like kind of like the team that torture me, because bro, if I would have literally, I literally did bet this. I would have bet not only the opposite, but I would have bet there's no universe that BDS is winning a best of 3 against G2. Like, if there's ever a team should have the flaw, the player strength, the fucking coach, everything that should be there to counter them, it should be in that series. So I think that win is more impressive than when SK beat Fnatic, for example. Like, I know in context at the time that was crazy. I don't think it is as much. Like, those are like players people didn't know. No one knew how it would work out. Fnatic themselves probably took it a bit easy. I think this match here, it's a normal match. He's clearly prepped properly. And then I'll also give you this angle as well, which is if you consider that in his teams, every single striker team, even if they play differently, Peter, one of the things I think is the obvious way you can infer when a coach is involved, bro, they all have this like build-up style of how they approach the map and how they approach the game, which to me clearly shows that like the style is coached by the coaching staff. The protocols of like these things trigger the next things. Like, I know it'll sound weird to a fan, but actually that is something even in some top Asian teams. It's sometimes hard to see, like, where is the influence there? Like, was that guy just doing a cool move there? You can always see with the BDS squad, they really do build things up. They clearly is like this A follows B, like you can see the logic of what they're doing. So to me, that I can't know how good that is, but to me, it has to be a team that the coach has a large sort of like imprint on the squad, and you can see his fingerprints throughout the people he's picked, how he's used them. So I'm with you. I think it was very well done. And obviously, to highlight the G2 win, that was an unbelievable win, mate. Like to 2-0 clap them, like that was ridiculous. That still doesn't make sense when I look at the rosters now on paper. How did they do it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that this week Irrelevant actually showed up, and I don't know what's been going on with Irrelevant this season. But yeah, like he was the better top laner this week, and Nuke was the better mid laner, and yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if it will happen next week, but for sure, yeah. Like,
what about this? I'll tell you one thing I would ask, because you both sort of opened the door to this, but you didn't fully walk through it. Right, you hinted at it a bit there, Jensen. Right, this is actually a classic LS topic. Remember, back in the day, LS's topic was, when the game wasn't full of all riot, like, go to the dragon now buttons, his logic was, if you can scale, why wouldn't you? Like, it's a way to basically mean you don't have to do anything in the game, but you win by basically nothing happening in the game, and eventually you just gain this extra edge. By the way, obviously I can align with this, because all my favourite players are fucking laners, aren't they? They just farm up like a motherfucker with no kills in lane. So I get the premise. But I actually do think, like you were addressing there, I do think that is actually a misunderstood thing in the game. I think a lot of pro players, because of maybe solo queue thinking, they always want the fucking snowball comp pro. They always want to be ahead in kills and be the ones with the agency on the map. They never want this like scaling approach. But I've always thought if you can make it work, it's tricky. It is one of the best ways to play the fucking game, though. Like you guys are talking about, like essentially, like the game now, you could even say, because of all the shutdowns, like you say, it sometimes actually plays against the team that's snowballing in a way that it doesn't when you're scaling, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that this is something that is one of those, it's always a tension, right? Like, how much of it do you want to look at it and say that, okay, this is how we want the whole agency in our court, and how much of this is us being the team that's wanting to wait for other people to mess up, and then us being able to then capitalize on those mess ups and win the game. Now, definitely, if you have the advantage of inevitability, right, which is this concept of scaling, it puts a lot of pressure in the opponent's court to go and do something. I think that for the longest time, even now with Void Grubs, with Rift Herald, there's still a lot of tools that exist for teams to do well with this. And I think that it's a little bit of a concerning thing, because in general, when I'm going through all these games, the team that needs to snowball and win the game, they're not doing it. All these teams that are supposedly playing these side lane champions, are playing all these single target pick tools, that are able to have the agency and then snowball the game accordingly, they're not successfully doing it, and then the team with the scaling composition comes online. We even saw it with the Azir with GiantX, right? Like KC against GiantX is the top team versus the bottom team. The team that picked Azir won the game. And how did they do it? They reached 40 minutes, they won a team fight, and they got across the line that way. So it's definitely one of the ways that I think domestically is very effective at helping you do well in a domestic season. And I think that this is a point of concern, because I think that if we talked about how bad the American teams were in 2019, I think there's a certain level of cynicism where people were just very willing to not develop their own game and then just focus on playing and maximizing farm, hitting the scaling power points, and then you have all these memes about Seraphine, Jinx, Ornn, and Azir being the CEOs of NA, right? Are we starting to shift in that paradigm now that the teams that are trying to play on two lanes, trying to snowball the game, are not able to win? I think they lost every single game. Every time I saw a team with a scaling advantage this weekend, they won that game.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit concerning.
I mean, it's also a way that, it's a mark of how strong you think EU is, right? Because if you're a bottom table team, definitely trying to play to snowball is really, 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 really fucking dangerous. Because whereas if you're playing to scale and you think that there are flaws in the way G2 play the game, or KC play the game, or Fnatic especially play the game, right? Like, then you can just wait for them to fuck up and give yourself an advantage. And I think this is something that Heretics especially are very, very good at this, right? Like they will basically never pick to snowball the game. And in fact, when they did in playoffs last year, it looked very, very unpleasant, right? So I think this is a good way to win. The question is, though, obviously, how good is your team going to be at the end of the year if all you do is play to scale? But hopefully, that you need to getting some wins, so at least you know how to play when you're in a position to win, is also an underrated part of the game, right? Because normally as coaches, we like to think, we're just going to go with the early game snowballing comp. We're just going to teach the formula for, the step-by-step, color by numbers, approach to how to win. And it's much easier to coach it by having the agency, so having the snowball comp. But you can also do it from the scaling side as well. Right? So that's what I say from that. But yeah, I agree that BDS seemed to, like, if I was BDS going into this playoffs, I would definitely not be playing to snowball. I think I would be playing to scale for sure.
Okay. Right, Peter, what is your good point?
So my good point for this week is Sheo. Yes, I finally get to talk up Sheo. Actually, so for people that don't know, additional context for this, Sheo is somebody that when I was still an LEC coach, we used to have season, player of the split voting and things like this. And Sheo would always be in my top 3. And in fact, I think I voted 5 times, 5 across 5 splits. And I put Sheo over Yike for 3 of those 5
Oh wow,
splits.
right.
So not the last. I think it was mainly in 2023. We're 2025 now. So 2023, I think I was having Sheo over Yike, and then 2024 I had Yike over Sheo. But basically, this is a guy. He's like really, really smart with his pathing. He's really, really good at knowing what lane he needs to be on the map, when he needs to be on it, and and like this is a guy that I rate very, very highly in that regard. I saw Labrov doing a lot of things last year, which I gave Labrov a lot of credit for how he was opening side and things like this. But now we see Labrov on G2 not doing that as consistently. It's worth asking whether this is something that Sheo was directing him with. I had concerns about him being on Heretics because he is not. How would I say about Sheo? He's not like it's not about shot calling. He's not like a natural like leader for the team, right? He's not like somebody who would just go and lead by example. He's a really, really valuable piece. But when you have a team with 3 rookies, you need a bit of that. You need your veterans to be the guys who are like the emotional leaders, who are the in-game leaders and things like this, right? Or to put the rookies in a position where they're comfortable. But from what we've seen so far, Flakked seems to be doing that. They had an example from the broadcast where Heretics were getting destroyed in that second game against Vitality, and it's Flakked basically just say, guys, breathe, calm down, we've got this. And then I went back and had a listen to some of Heretics' voice comms from the start of this year, which I hadn't been listening to, and it's always Flakked. Flakked is always the one providing that like backbone to the shot calling, and I think that's enabled Sheo as well to play really, really well. So I think Sheo, I haven't really had the chance to big up Sheo that much because it's mainly, in my opinion, been Stend playing really, really well, or like flashes of brilliance from Flakked or from Carlson. But this weekend, definitely Sheo was good, and I think Sheo, the way Sheo and Flakked play together on this team, Sheo providing like the Flakked providing the framework, and Sheo providing the like trigger pull, the innovation and things like this, I think is a really, really good system, and it gives me hope for Heretics going forwards. I still think that they have a little bit of an issue in mid lane that I worry about in the long term. But again, this is the decision they've made, the decision to bring Camelou from Division 2. So I can't really be too harsh on Camelou in particular. I can maybe be a bit harsh on Heretics for choosing this as their project. But I would say definitely Sheo and Flakked continue to play like this. This is a team that they can compete. And I would say the top 2 in this league are KC and G2, and Fnatic, Fnatic and Koi are definitely both capable of having an off day. So, you don't have to be the 3rd best team in this league to go to Worlds with the teams playing how they are this right now. You just have to be a top 6 team. And, if that's what Heretics are going to be, and if Sheo continues to play like this, I don't see any reason why they can't be a top 6 team in summer. Right, for sure.
What do you think, Jensen?
Yeah, I mean, Team Heretics, I think I watched the set they had against Vitality. I have quite a fair bit of comments on that set as a whole. Sheo was definitely a very big part of why they won that game, of why they won that set as a whole, right? And the way that he was consistently one step ahead of Linkers throughout most of it. I felt that he was a very large contributing factor to it. I haven't really spent a lot of time looking into, and I'm definitely not as invested in as you in the whole Team Heretics and what the development projects is. So to me, this was watching a little bit of there's a little bit of amateur hour going on over here, and a lot of my focus was on what Vitality was doing wrong, rather than these are the things that Team Heretics were doing right.
Is that going to be your negative point? Maybe we'll come back to that. We'll circle around back to Vitality later.
I will say, one of the things is, if I think of the way I characterised Sheo before, I've referenced this last week, is I did just think of him very much as him and Nuke were like a 2-headed monster of they obviously play together, they're clearly on the same page. I can tell the coaching staff makes the whole game around how these guys play. So actually, I did think the choice to split them up was a very brave decision. I figured this is probably the team where this guy actually has agency and is able to play. But I've actually been kind of surprised on Heretics, Peter, because it's so low lane as a fucking rookies, the complete rookies. These aren't at people that like he has like long history with, or he played in the LFL with it. So like, actually very impressed that he's actually been able to be like a quality player. And actually this team, I mean, the funny thing is Heretics themselves have actually just been the sleeper of the entire LEC this year, because the joke is, even if, as on people know on the show, even if you want to hype rookies, it's fucking Vitality you hype, not Heretics. But actually Heretics have sort of low-key without the big names, just week after week gotten themselves in a sort of contention for being discussed and actually winning games. And now all of a sudden, like, you actually have to look now, realistically, there's almost no one they can't beat now. Maybe they won't beat, like, you know, Fnatic and G2, but that's about it. Like, you saw they almost did beat Carmine. In theory, they can beat almost anyone in the league now. So yeah. And by the way, I do think jungler's massively influential still in the game, so you can't overlook that.
I mean, the funny thing is that there was a comment in the post-match thread, I think of after Vitality's win against Koi, where there was somebody saying, "Oh, you know, this year there's so many exciting rookies in the league. There's Nak, there's SkewMond, there's Syak, there's Carlson." And then he named one other rookie, and I can't remember who it was, but they didn't mention Stend, and they never mentioned. People never mention Stend, and it's so it drives me crazy, because this guy, like, I think people just forget that he exists. I don't know whether it's because he has no social media presence. I don't know whether it's, you know, that he's like slightly older rookie. I think he's like 23 or something, right? I don't know what it is, but like, this guy, like, he's a rookie. People forget he exists, and he's so fucking good. Like, he's so good, and yeah, that's all I kind of have to say. Him and Sheo, like, the key to this team, you know, Flakked is always going to be Flakked, right? He's not going to dominate the game from the laning phase. He's going to be comfortable in team fights. He's going to stabilize your team in the mid game. He's going to do some shot calling. He's going to be like, he's going to keep the team focused, right? And he's going to team fight well. And I mean, this goes even when he's on a champion like Draven, right? Like, the way that he snowballs a game on Draven is very different to like how Jack Spectre or Hans Sammer will snowball the game on Draven, right? Like, those guys, they're playing Draven, junglers bot 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, right? With Flakked, he's happy to scale a bit with Draven, you know, try to get his first kill in one of these like 6 minute, 8 minute river skirmishes and things like this, right? He's not like hard calling jungle attention all the time. So he'll be there, he'll be stable. Carlson developing, yeah. Kamalu, yeah, I mean, like, he's developing. He's certainly a lot better than he was at the start of the split. Yeah, but let's see how this team goes on for the rest of the year, right?
I purposely kept my comments to Sheo, because my good point anyway, so we can lead into it, was going to be about Flakked. So let's just do it now. So you already set it up there, Peter. I actually do think this is a player that almost like the scene needs to do like its own intervention, because the narratives just got out of control that first year in G2, and they never stopped. Because if you remember, when he was in G2, if you watched him, his problem was this: he clearly wasn't a G2 player. Like, he wasn't some like generational talent from ADC like a Hans Sammer or a fucking, I mean, the joke is even Perks was actually incredible when he played ADC, if you remember. Like, these were like truly world-class players. Even Reckless was the MVP of the league, remember when they had him? When Flakked came along, first of all, he was coming from the RLs, and he wasn't, by the way, some like, oh my god, this is the next great player to come from the... No, that wasn't even his hype. Then he came into the squad. Actually, if you remember, they did in that team, since they just got BrokenBlade and they had fucking prime caps. Unsurprisingly, they played through solo lanes a lot, and then since his support, Targamas, was like on roam duty, it was just this guy playing 1v2 in lane, and then playing like, you know, Seraphine and shit like that, and then the joke was, what made him look really bad, believe it or not, was when they had the games where it was like, fucking obviously Targamas would play the Senna, wouldn't he, and he would be the carry from the lane. So unfortunately, it sets up the narrative that like, right, the Flakked guy's like basically got a bot. He just does like, you know, he just does like a 5 out of 10 performance. The Targamas guy is actually like the sort of Trimby, you know, Hillasang, Mickey X next genius support. And if anything, you know, this guy's just surplus to requirements. But as I always say, first of all, I think if you just look how Targamas has played in the rest of his career, you actually have to revisit that G2 period and go, mate, this Flakked guy actually plays fabulously with every support he's been given. He's had the Trimbies of the world, now he's got the Stend guy. You can give him any type of support, by the way, like any style, anything, he makes it work. Also, one thing I misunderstood was this. Because I'm used to AD Carry being a carry, like the guy on your team, that's not who he is. But I'll give people the lens that will make this guy seem so much better. You know how we all in the modern day appreciate the super good weak side top laners like the Odoamnes of the world? This guy does that from ADC in a way no one in the West does. Like, bro, in the West, every ADC is just a bad, I wish I could carry the whole game ADC. Like, some of them just aren't good enough to get the pick and whatever. This guy does understand, like Odo Amner, like my job, I literally am going to be the weak side half the time in this game, minimum, by the way. And in fact, I'm going to have to do picks that go this way. But one thing I love is, one, he seems to have completely understood that mission, Peter. He doesn't seem like he's got any problem with it. And this guy, just like a great weak side top laner, plays completely within his game. I think it's actually, like, if I was a coach, if I can't have the best ADC, give me someone like this, mate. This is a player that, for real, I call players like this, they actually remove problems from your teams. Like, just their very nature and who they are, all the things you were talking about. These are issues I could have with star players. How are they going to work? Who am I going to want? But I actually love it. I actually think if you have a player like this, look, the key thing is you have to have a team like this. You've got to have a team where you understand your team is the solos. But if you do, again, in the same way as if you have some dominant mid ADC, you would want the Odo Am, their top laner. This is the ADC you actually want if you think your solos are studs. If you think they're going to like rule the game and be what you want to focus on, this guy's going to set that up completely. So I actually do think at this point in time, I have to revisit. He's actually underrated to me. He's just a very good player. Also, by the way, the sheer consistency of his performances is very impressive. Like, this guy is not a really up and down. This guy really can give you like a consistent performance almost every game, it feels like. I'm actually just impressed by you. I think he's a legit player.
You want to go first, Jensen?
Yeah, do you have any thoughts, Jensen? Flakked.
Yeah, I mean, I always have an appreciation for these players, right? One of the things as a coach, we always tell players is, know your job, do your job. And when somebody knows their job and does their job, you got to give them the credit for that. It's boring. It's a regular office work.
True.
But it's an honest day's work, right? You go in there, you play your lane to power, you show them in the team fights, you don't have to do anything fancy, and you just let the strategy do its job by fulfilling your job in that. And I think this one of the larger questions in terms of like, what is the eye test that we have for players today, and how do we really evaluate players? And I think increasingly League of Legends is becoming this very structured game. It's something that I have always been pushing for a lot more towards. So it's a lot less about like players who can grab things by the seat of the pants and then just go and find the magical angle. You so rarely see that these days. It's so much about who gets the setup, who gets the correct map movements, and who understands the correct positioning. And then, of course, when you have that structure, you can then see holes in the opponents to exploit accordingly. And having someone like Flakked who's over there, he's not going to randomly die because he's contesting a mid wave and his team is behind on the map, right? He's not going to be that guy. So many games, even pro games, this game has been out for 15 years, guys. How are pro 80 carries still dying on the mid wave when their team is second on the map? I don't understand it, okay? I don't get it.
Yep.
Shout out Kazi.
Yeah.
The all-time greatest, the GOAT of that shit, the GOAT.
I mean, what I would say, holy moly. Well, what I will say for Flakked as well is that, so I'm going to go with the Pokemon reference. I don't know how many people who watch this will watch Pokemon, but in Pokemon there is basically a type called the normal type. And basically, in the latest Pokemon game, they have gyms and obviously like the kind of archetypal trainers for those types. And the normal type gym leader is a guy called Larry. And Larry is basically, he's just a normal salaryman. You know, he has a nice top hat. He has his briefcase. You find him in like, I think it's a bar. You know, he's like having a drink after work. You know, he just doesn't want to be disturbed. You know, he's just going to go be a salaryman, go and do his job. And by the end of the game, like he's I'm not going to spoil the game too much, but basically he adds a one or two like tricks to his bow. And that's what I would say. What I would say is how I would describe Flakked, and I'm sure Flakked will hate me for describing him in this way, but like he is the guy. He will be very, very stable, but it's not like he has no tricks, right? He will play the Swain, he will play the Seraphine. Like I'm sure if Garen was in the meta, like Heretics, when we played Garen Yumi Garen AD carry, right? But every single game, like if that was something that they could do. And he is the guy that makes it so that your Sheos or your Kaisers, you know, I'm going to mention Kaiser here, guys carry, like guy who plays carries from support your target masters, right? These are the guys who will shine and who will look really, really good playing with this guy. I will say that Odo is almost psychopathic in his desire to play weak side. You know, Odo was the type of guy who would cheer who would like find pride in only going 10 CS down in Nar versus Maokai. You know, that's the type of guy Odo is. Okay. I don't think Flakked is quite to that level, but you know, definitely Flakked is the type of guy who will, if he can take the losing matchup and go even, like he'll find pride in that. Whereas a lot of AD carries, for sure, don't have the ego to be able to do that for sure. I agree.
Okay. Right. What is your bad point then, Jensen? What we going with here, mate?
So I think we touched on it a little bit before this, and whenever I come on and I talk about some bad point, it's always about some mid-game setup. It's really what I want to talk about is how teams execute with these side laning champions. When you see these Akalis, these Sejuanis, these flanking compositions. Now these setups, they have existed, right? It's not like they changed the map and then they changed the champions, and these are all new champions, and you got to rethink the way you play the game. Since like 2019, 2020, there were all these 0-3-2 setups that already existed, and you saw the way the LPL and LCK teams were able to approach team fights with them. And in fact, I would say that ever since they changed the architecture of the map to make the Drake more open, you would think that these types of setups where you would be able to split 3 and 2 with 2 flanking champions, maybe say an Akali and a Wukong, and then having the AD carry support and usually a tank jungler or a tank top laner stick as the main tree, and how they would approach a neutral objective. This is something that I think Dam1 showed a very strong mastery of when they played the Worlds in 2020. And these are things that I feel that's very missing from the playbooks and how teams are trying to execute all these Akali, all these Aurora compositions with all these flanking champions, right? Aurora is a little bit newer, but it still fits the category of I can approach from a flank, I'm looking for an angle, I'm going to go in there and find a one-shot on the AD carry. How the teams coordinate this, how the teams move into position to do these things, I think is going to be the one big thing that teams are going to really need to look at if they want to talk about how are we going to win against the teams that's just going to say that I'm going to pick Azir, Ornn, and you know what, let's just go to full 20 yards with this and say Seraphine, right? So
By the way, are you implying that it's actually like overall this understanding has regressed, do you think?
I think it's just not there.
Right.
Is it because it's regressed or it's not there, or like we see the Sejuani flanking on the same side as the Akali when the Sejuani needs to be together with the Corki and the Bard. I'm thinking of the Karzi game, right? That this is Team Heretics versus Vitality, right? Where they're approaching the Rift Herald fight, and then the Sejuani is approaching the same side as the from the same side as the Akali. Where if the Sejuani just approaches from the same side as the Bard and the Corki, it makes the entry to the fight so much easier. The Maokai ulti doesn't completely rinse them that way.
Yeah. So I've got a follow-up question to this, which is, do you think that, because the last time you came on, I thought the really interesting thing you talked about, Jensen, was about how Fearless Draft like gave you different phases in the draft, you know? So like you're playing like a draft from 2025, and then as it goes on, you're like playing a draft from like 2020, or, you know, like you've taken out a lot of the OP elements. Do you think it becomes easier or harder to play for scaling as a draft progresses in like a best of series? Because this all kind of like, I'm just curious on this, right? Because a lot of the safer carries like your Azirs aren't going to be in the draft anymore, right? Is this because EU is playing like best of 3 and it's going to be different in the playoffs, or do you think this is like a general, you know, because it's easier to punish, right, if the carry is immobile versus like an Azir?
Yeah, I think in the best of 3 it's definitely easier to get access to your more premium champions, because these are champions, it also requires you to have a higher degree of mechanical execution, whereas for the more tactical, the snowball comps requires a high level of tactical execution, right? So it's technical versus tactical, right? So it sounds very similar. So mechanical. So I'm going to use the term mechanical execution here. So if you have proficiency in Azir and then now you're going to Fearless and you have to play something like Anivia and you haven't played the champion for a long period of time, your knowledge of where to stand, where are the safe spots, which is something that if someone in 2015, 2016 would have been very used to, right? Knowing that these are exact spots you can stand on the map, and so that you can avoid getting engaged on while being able to maintain the Blizzard on the choke and stuff like that. That knowledge would not necessarily be there, so it becomes a little bit tougher. But I think in best of 3, there's still more than enough champions, right? There's your Orianna, there's when it comes to scaling mages, these things are a dime a dozen. There's Cassiopeia, there's lots of things that exist in there, and it's really a question of how the teams allocate resources to going down this route. So if a team is very dedicated to saying that, okay, we want to be the scaling team, then Azir is one option they can go for. Orianna has always been the queen of the mid lane. She's always going to exist there.
It makes sense. So, like, the reason why I kind of asked this because since we're talking about Heretics versus Vitality, so obviously, for people that didn't watch this game, like Vitality picked the Anivia top. They like massively snowballed. They're like the game is completely unlosable. They're like literally walking into the enemy base, and then they fluff the siege two times in a row, and then like the game is a bit more even. Yeah. But the game is basically unlosable. Even I think Vedius on the broadcast is saying this game is unlosable just as they literally lose. But I guess my question to this is, whose fault do you think this is? Do you think it should be like Knack who should be calling it? Do you think it's the coach's responsibility to like inform their team better how to play around the Anivia? Do you think it's like the veterans who should have seen more Anivia? Like how do you go around fixing this, or like who's responsible? Like obviously we can all see that Vitality fucked up really badly and they shouldn't have lost that game, right? So whose fault is it? Who's most to blame? Who should we taking our pitch? Because this is a bad point, right? Who should I take my pitchforks and chase out of the town? You know, like for this.
Okay. I don't want to distract into this because you are actually bringing it into my ugly point, right? Which I think is a very interesting discussion. But I just want to make sure that the bad point that I'm trying to bring up is not lost in this, right? Because we're talking about how they're ending the sieges, and my bad point is just very specifically for how do we approach Drake fights. And then these are things that I think teams are just approaching Drake fights wrongly. So that's going to be my bad point. Shall we just go into the ugly point since we've brought it up already?
Those?
We can do that if you want. Yeah, we can bounce back. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this is why I think that this is going to be a very interesting discussion, because this is one of the things that I was watching this video about Brazilian football, right? Where Brazil used to be one of the biggest powerhouses when it came to football in the world. And they used to play this brand of football. They call it samba football, right? Where it's all about this free-flowing, attacking kind of football that they played. And what happened is that in the last 25 years or so, Europeans have revolutionized the way that football has been played, and it's a lot less about individual expression, and it's a lot more about how do you come together as a team. And if you recall, there's these videos about people talking about Barcelona, where it's a lot about knowing your job, doing your job, and the importance of consistency, and letting your teammates know that you'll be consistent and that these plays will be connected in a consistent manner. And now this is very at odds with the idea and identity of the free-flowing style of samba football that used to be very dominant in Brazil. And why I want to bring this up is that I recall, I think this is about, it's something that I'm quite sure that you yourself, Peter, and Mac have said, even when I work together with you guys, is that there used to be a statement that you cannot coach an aggressive player. Sorry, you can coach an aggressive player to be passive, but you cannot coach a passive player to be aggressive. Right? And you can sub those words in and out. This is going to be my ugly point. I think with what has happened recently, with how much they bet on Hylissang, right? That not working out, them role swapping Niski. And now today, if you're talking about pitchforking, is another one of Max champions, Karzi, absolutely inting his ass off in those games and costing them the series. This is where you have to say, is this where you have to go back and look at the philosophy? Is this what's really guiding the team? Because if we look at Hylissang and saying that this guy's inting all the time, he's playing too aggressively, right? Okay, we swap a player out, we bring a very calculated, a very knowledgeable player from mid lane into the support position. But the problem is unstopping. Is this a team identity, team philosophy issue that we're looking at? And is that idea where we want to have aggression be uncurbed and then try to reel them in and hold the leash if possible?
Sure.
Right? Is that possibly the issue here with Vitality?
Sure, I can see it. I can definitely see like it's if you have somebody who likes to play on his limits as much as Kazi does, I can definitely see how there could be some risks here. I would say I think Kazi had like one pretty good series this weekend. Like he had a good series against Koi, but he wasn't the reason they beat Koi, right? Like the reason they beat Koi was jungle top, right? But like I'm not gonna say he's blameless, right? Like I think that basically against Heretics, Kazi had probably one of the worst series that he's had in the last couple of years, right? And I would say, obviously, I think that there are games that really, really matter and games that don't matter. And the problem for Vitality is because they lost that series against Rogue earlier in the season, every game really, really matters and they're in a danger of missing playoffs, right? And at points like this, you cannot afford to lose 2-0 to Heretics, right? Like, especially when one of those games is like the freest win of the freest win, right? But for me, I think that having higher variance gives you the chance to beat these other stronger teams, right? And sometimes you just have to tolerate, you have to tolerate that Jizuke is going to run it down and go 0-5 in one of your games, right? In order that you get the best out of him later. But definitely, like, I think in that series, it's hard for me to tell from the outside whether it's Nak's fault for like not shot calling his Anivia, right? Because it like he's the guy who's leading the game, right? He should have 90% of the comps, right? He's has some absurd score. I think he was like 6-1 or 7-1 or something ridiculous. Like he's the one who should be saying, play for me. Don't push the mid wave, right? We should be playing to push the bot wave. You should be grouping around me and you should be playing for me, right? But at the same point, when it's your veterans that are the ones who are getting caught, like Niski got caught in that game as well, right? A couple of times. It's difficult, right? It's difficult for the rookie to go and like yell at the veterans. Flakked, he's the veteran, so he can tell his team, calm down, we've got this, etc. It's harder for Nak to go and say to Kazi and to Niski, who've been around for like, Kazi's been around 5 years, Niski's been around, almost a decade now, right? Like, calm down, play slow, it's not that easy for Nak to do it, right? So I think it depends on your seniority within the hierarchy of the team. That's what I would say.
Okay, obviously the complicated thing is he did make two separate points. One was a bad point and then one was an ugly. So I'll go back to the bad. The bad one, the idea that like team fighting is like not as good as it should be. There's like some amateurish play. I do agree with that. Like I have always thought one of the here's what's funny. As someone who doesn't originally come from League and I'm not only in League, so I'm not only seeing like that I'm from North America, I'm a League of Legends person, or I'm from Europe and I'm a League of Legends. I always have certain areas of disconnect where I'm always shocked like people can't see things. I'll give you a weird example. Way back in the day, if you want to go back quite literally like 10 plus years ago, if you remember the old Cloud9 team they used to have with High and Sneaky and Meteos and all those guys, right? Back when they were actually, at one point in time, like probably one of the most coordinated Western teams that they used to play really well together. Everyone seemed like they had good comms and stuff. I remember saying to Monty, if everyone can remember, really early back in the day in OGN, there was like a brief period where Koreans actually figured out how you could aggro the dragon, so you took almost no damage, and they could basically do the dragon at something insane, Peter, like I don't know, like 6 minutes into the game or something, whatever, like almost as soon as it came, they could just do it. And because they perfectly juggled the aggro, they would take like one dragon hit to like one person or something insane, but they would get it for free. Now, obviously, you had to sneak it to do it and hope the jungle didn't invade and stuff. But what's funny is the second they did this, Peter, they immediately tried to do that in LCS. I remember saying to Monty, dude, it's so we didn't even have the term blackpilling back then, but it's so blackpilling that like even our best Western team can't do it. Like they actually can't get all the aggro off. Like they would looked like the same thing, but they would get hit like 2 or 3 times more, and it would be more questionable if the other jungle came in as to whether they got this like dragon steal up. And I used to say to Monty, mate, that's not even an area where you're actually like under pressure. You just like basically it's like 2 or 3 people just coordinating. I said to him, mate, if we can't be better in that area, how are we ever going to beat them in like a 5v5 team fight where there's all these variables? And if they're doing small things better, they're always going to have an edge. And one thing I've always found really shocking is in the West, I actually, this is why I want to throw it back to you. I want to know if you guys have like a theme for this. I don't know if it's something weird. Like, I think one of the weirdest things about League of Legends is every pro player simultaneously practices with his team, but then plays the game in a weird public mode that has nothing to do with how teams play. And in some sense, maybe even trains himself like negative qualities of how you should play the game. Because if you think about how people fight in LEC and LTA, it is like solo queue. They just fight based on weird ideas like I'm fed or like, hey, there's a kill available, which is like, that is very amateur hourish. Because to me, a team fight is like, it's like coordinated dance choreography or something. Like there's a lot of like, you have to almost go in and the people with the shot callers have to have ideas in mind, like what are the win conditions of this fight? Like, by the way, one thing I hate is the idea that you do it based on players. Like, well, he's our carry, so you go, no, what's the comp? Like, is he fed? Is he the guy who actually has to stay out of this one? Is that the target for the, like, was it actually the top player that got fed? And so ignore the AD carry who normally is their star player. We're going for the top player in this fight. There's so many things that almost just get taken for granted. And we just hope, like, throw the dice out there. We just work. Because I'll tell you 2 things I've always found insanely blackpilling about Western team fighting. One is, I'm not even joking. To this day, I feel like there are so few top laners understand how to actually do a TP flag to do a team fight. It's actually, bro, I was watching that 10 years ago. Koreans would murder everyone doing that. And then the other one, this is actually quite a recent one because this champion only came out a few years ago. Bro, that year, 2023, where JDG was doing that Golden Road run, one of the areas that was so crazy, the difference between East and West in team fights, was how all Asian star mid laners were godlike at Nico flanks. They would all just 24/7, even if they didn't get it off, were just threatening the Nico flank always in the team fight. And you could just see how it made their opponent play completely differently, like where the damage zone is, when we could put it. Westerners weren't doing any of this, bro. They would just be like, what? They would even do that thing where they just walk up with the Nico, like in the fight, like visible, and you'd just be like, then everyone would know it's either going to go in now or back off or whatever. So what I'm getting to is, I want to actually get, what do you guys think? Why is it that actually this area does seem weaker? Because I made the point on a past show, I actually do think when a team is really good, like I think KCorp's sick in team fights, when you actually see it, the edge it gives you is crazy in the West. Like, why in this area, in theory, the aspect of league that everyone plays the most every day, why is this area so far behind? Do you have a theory, Jensen? Do you have any sort of theory crafting as to why it would be?
I think there's a lot of hand waving when it comes to reviewing these sort of situations. I think you brought up a lot of the use of crutches that I think that I hear people talk about, right? I think it's a question of how do people frame the discussion around these style fights. What really worked for me when I was trying to get players to understand team fights and the positioning is that there's two factors, right? One is, what is your job? So there's this very bigger picture question here that I'll pose to them, and this will be tied into, so it's actually three things. So the first is like, what's the mode of team fight we are in? The second is, what's your job in a team fight? And the third is, what's your position, right? So what's the mode of team fight? The way I would qualify is that there's three general ways that team fights can occur. There's the all-in team fight, where you're trying to secure resets for a reset champion like Tristanov or Master Yi or Aatrox, for example, right? There's the pick and disengage, where you're going to go over there, blow a load onto one person, and then once the last spell has been cast, there's usually a disengage spell. In this case, and how we can tell the difference between Western and Eastern teams is how a lot of the Western teams, after the Syndra uses the E, they continue to click forward, right? And then they get a kill, the Syndra uses the E, they continue to click forward, and then they get wiped by the reset champion on the other side. So that's pick and disengage. And then the third one is kite and re-engage, where you then want to start in a very advanced position. So this is with your Azir and Ezreal and stuff like that. And you want to start in an advanced position and force the opponent to then eat through multiple cycles of your cooldowns before they are finally at the neutral objective. So these are the three different ideas. And based on the three different ideas, the positions and jobs of the players would then be different, right? Like, who's supposed to be there to poke the opponents, and who's supposed to be there so that when the opponents go in and do damage, firstly, you need to be staggered if you're doing the mid lane and AD carry, so that you both don't get hit by the equivalent of whatever the Malphite ulti, Nico ulti, whatever the engage spell is. And once again, right, you can see the difference. Teams that play Jace well in the East, they are always staggered. Jace is 600, 700 units away from the AD carry, whereas in the East, people are like... whereas in the West, you see people playing Jace compositions and both people walking up to hit the dart together, and then both people get hit by the Ellis dart. It's so ugly when you watch it, right? And it's being able to break these things down to these levels of detail to say that this is where you're supposed to be standing, this is the brush you're supposed to be controlling, and then there's these ideas of like bodyguarding, where this is where the support's supposed to be staggered in relation to all these style of things. Then once I was able to break it onto that level, then I could get people to understand it. As to why people don't do this more, I can only look back into my experiences where I did not have such a high level of structure to it. It was a lot of people would just watch how other people would play it. They just get a random feel for it, and they didn't really see the importance of these distinctions, right? Even things like LeBlanc, which is one of the more poignant examples that I can think of. The way that you see top players, Eastern players, or Caps play LeBlanc, and the positions that he will hide in to find the flank to delete the AD carry. So the entire idea is you want to W in perpendicular to the direction in which the opponent is moving in the fight. And then you will watch like American mid laners, or I think even some of the weaker European mid laners, and they would be just trying to come front to back. And then there's a tank in front of you. Oh no, I can't. I W forward. The CC is coming my way now. I don't have any space to go in and delete the AD carry, right? So it's really being able to just break team fights down to these type of structures, and the more you do it, you start to realize that there's certain patterns towards it based on the champions that you're playing, based on the type of things that you're looking out for. And once you're able to describe it in the roles, I think it makes it easier. But a lot of times it's just about I think it goes back again to the ugly point I was having, right? There's this mysticism, there's this enchantment with the idea that the good players, you're earning this amount of salary, they will see the right play, they will find the right play, and they will perform really well in the team fights. Whereas I think these days it's all about having things down to structured science and knowing exactly what is the sequence of events and how do you sequence and position these things accordingly.
But I think to go on to that point, I don't think it's about like having your whole team doesn't need to know, right? Your whole team, like, how would I describe this? Like, there's a lot of, we talk about shot calling in terms of shot calling on the map, but often it's very important within teams right now to have carries or people who you funnel resources into, who are able to dictate the tempo of a team fight, or who are be able to demand things of other people, right? So I'm just going to use Kalist because he's the one person. I mean, I'm Flakked. You can use Flakked as well, but Kalist plays more the carry, like Haka. So one thing Kalist is doing in a team fight, for instance, is he is micromanaging when he needs zone control. He's calling summoners of the other team. He's saying things like, I'm going to bait X cooldown, right? So just be aware of X cooldown or something like this. Or he's going to say things like, I'm going to, I don't think he says this exactly, but the first things I said, he says exactly, but things like, I'm going to step forward and Varus Q, and then I'm going to step back, right? I don't know how he says that, but the meaning is really, really clear. If you listen to the voice comms, it just doesn't translate well into English from French. But basically he is like always, when I've listened to his comms in detail, he's basically saying, I'm going to step forward, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, right? So everyone knows exactly what he's going to do, and this matters a lot for how the team positions around him, because you talked about different kinds of team fighting, right? So if you're playing the kite and disengage type of team comp, right? Where should your front line be? Your front line is normally behind your carries when they have their cooldowns up. If everyone has all of your cooldowns, let's say you have a Sivir, you have a Varus, right? Your Sivir, your Varus, your Jace step in front of your front line. They poke, and then they retreat behind your front line, and you kite backwards as the enemy team has their, as you don't have your cooldowns up, or your Syndra or whatever, and then you re-step forward when you have your counter. So you're playing phases of the fight around your cooldowns, right? You're playing the hard engage comp. I can't remember exactly what you call that, right? But the first type of comp where you want to get the resets. Where's your front line? Your front line's right in the front, right? Like they're jumping in, right? It doesn't matter what cooldowns your carries have. You need to go and force the fight, and playing these more. Anyone can play an engage comp, right? Like it's just jump in, use your cooldowns, hope that you have enough gold, and stomp, right? But the thing that makes a team like KC really good at team fighting, the thing that makes a team like Heretics for their talent level, right, really good at team fighting, is I know that those two carries like Flakked and Kazi, sorry, not Kazi, Flakked and Kalist, what are they saying? They're saying cooldown, right? This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. It makes it so easy for the rest of the team to play around them. And this is one of the reasons why it's very, very difficult, normally for rookie AD carries to come in and be really effective in a team fight, right? Like the one person who I know who was able to do it really well as a rookie was Danny, but obviously who did Danny have on his team? He had impact, he's shot calling, right? These things in a team fight, so he doesn't need to. And I think this is why, I think, the strength of a team like KC. This is why their team fighting is good. It's not complicated. It's not, sure, they have good mechanical players, but it's that they're willing to communicate and recognize the phases of the team fight. And frankly, I don't think this is KC. I think this is Kalist.
Right.
I think this is Yike. And, maybe a little bit Tarkavas, but I think it's basically Yike and Kalist who are the two guys. And you see that whenever one of those two is really, really far behind and is not shot calling this and is not in a position to shot call this in a team fight, their team fighting gets much worse. So that's kind of what I would say. It's not impossible. I think it's very hard to make all of your players and understand all of those things immediately. But yeah, as long as one guy knows, that's all that really, really matters.
By the way, one thing I do appreciate about, go on, Jensen, go on, jump in.
Oh, I was just saying that I think that this was actually a very interesting discussion, right? Because I approached it from a very map control, like understanding the map architecture, and this actually proves like the 15 years of League of Legends team fighting, how things have evolved over time, right? Because what Peter was talking about is very much under the the habits that are important for players to have, for them to understanding how to execute spell economy type of team fights, right? When you are abusing ultimate differences, when you're abusing cooldown differences, and that's something that I think the likes of top esports and Knight, right? As much as we as the macro team map control connoisseurs will always get mad at this guy. What was he really good at? Fighting the 5v5 team fight. This guy doesn't have flash. This is how we are gonna get his ass, right? And that was why I think that this actually was quite an interesting thing to think about. But I mean, my original point was this is really just about the setup and the map structure that is fundamentally wrong. And then once they're in there, their ability to then spot and find these opportunities to then abuse these cooldowns. But I think that's a great point as well. Like if you want to be a new player today, going into the LEC, or going to competitive League of Legends in general, the amount of things that you have to learn, there is a very large knowledge wall, and I would even say it's a habit wall for you to overcome. And it's one of those things where is solo queue or having this like free-flowing kind of like I'm feeling in the moment kind of thing isn't necessarily the best way to do things, or maybe you need to already be communicating, this is my cooldowns, engage in 5, 4, 3, to then set you up and set your team up to be able to make the right decisions accordingly.
I just appreciate that Jensen has you can see why he's a coach. He has like a manner to him, Peter, where he always makes you feel smarter when he's explaining something you don't quite understand. He has that sort of like tutor vibe, you know, where they go like, now let's just break this down. Look, let's imagine instead of X plus A, it's actually one Jimmy has 10 shopping bags and his mum needs him to get 3 now. How many should he take? When they say it like that, you almost feel like, oh, I'm in a safe place. I'm learning here. It's okay that I don't understand. Yeah, Jensen, be more didactic. And then I also love the fact that whenever you explain something like that, Jensen, I do just want, being as at the moment, no one will give you a bloody job. I just want to hire you to be my personal Jarvis, where I have you in a heads-up display when I'm doing these shows. I'm like, Jensen, what are they talking about with this? And then you come up like, well, Thorin, the way they are describing that. And then I say it more charismatically, and then I get all the bonus and credit for it. So yeah, I agree. There you go. By the way, we actually did, you're right though, we did actually over-focus on the ugly point there, the bad point. So the ugly point, if you remember, Peter, was his whole thing about the fact, which by the way is actually, to be fair, that was one of their defining characteristics. They have said it's why they stuck with Hylissang, this notion that, like, I actually do agree with it as a general point, which is essentially, if you understand what causes people in terms of their makeup and what they do and don't like about the game to play more conservatively, it's incredibly hard to convince that type of a player to be aggressive in the game, because you almost have to like deconstruct their whole worldview of how they see themselves and the game. Whereas actually, when you're telling the person who's really aggressive, a la a Hylissang or a leader or something like that, when you're telling someone like that, every now and then rein it in a bit, that's not actually equivalent. It sounds like it is, but it's not. Like, it's one thing to sort of say every now and then, don't always pull the trigger or pull the brakes a little bit, as opposed to going, you've never hit the accelerator, but go to 5th gear. Like that, I do get that is worlds apart. But the problem I would have with this topic is, I also think it's why, you know, in the last episode, Peter, you made that point that like it's really hard to actually put labels on players like this person is good or he is LEC ready. Because the real question is like, well, what roles are you going to play in and what sort of team setup do they have and how are they going to come and who else is he going to be replied to play? There's like a million factors that can completely attenuate whether that person is indeed good or not. I think the same thing applies to coaches, because I'll give you an example right now. Right now, if you want a great example of how brutal sports coaching is, look at Real Madrid's team right now, right? So if you don't know, Carlos Ancelotti, who by the way is one of the GOAT fucking coaches in the history of football, like unbelievable trophy cabinet of like goes everywhere, wins everything, like he's basically now going to sort of be told like, could you just quietly fuck off so we can like restart like a different era of Real Madrid now? And the reason that is mental, Peter, is he won the Champions League last year, and everyone, this is where I'm going to get to, because you'll get to the point of why I'm picking this for Mac and Pat here. When your style works, people will unfortunately often present it as the ultimate style that always works. So if you don't know, the genius of Ancelotti's system for real is like this. It's a very simple, it's that he's not the guy who does the Pep Guardiola, like I'm going to micromanage everything and you only ever do this and your job is only, his people say what's brilliant for him is he's the old school counter. His style is more like, right, you're like a brilliant player who should have agency. I'm going to give you like fairly loose reins and I'm going to let you sort of figure out how to be brilliant on the pitch. And then I'll vaguely herd all these cats together, as it were. The problem is, Peter, when you do that and you win like the Champions League, people are going to go, what a genius. He just sees the game in a way the others don't. But here's the problem. When you do that and it doesn't work, like you have about, like right now, if you don't know, the Real Madrid team now is, the joke is, it's like 3 people who should probably normally be like the central part of a team, but they're all playing at the same time, just doing like the joke is it's like three strikers competing with each other as to who's going to score this goal instead of like passing the ball and like taking the self. So it actually doesn't work that well. So what's funny is he's probably going to actually like have to like quietly like fuck off and be coach Brazil or something now, mate. Like even though in last year when he's doing the same thing, the result means we all go, genius. Oh, he's just so ahead of the other coach. So I feel like people are doing that with Mac and Pad. Everyone's now going to go the other way. If Vitality isn't good, they're going to hate on them and be like they were overrated or, you know, they were wrong about Hylissang. But I do think this is why big picture philosophy thinks there's never really like a hard and fast rule. You can have like, this is my trend and my style. What do you think on this aspect, Peter? Because I sort of get what he means by that. Like, it is clear at this point in time, they did ride with Hylissang a bit too long, mate. Like, you could say years too long in certain cases. So what do you think on this topic? I think it's quite an interesting coaching topic, though. There clearly there's no ultimate style, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this in the past about Hylissang. Like he like they threw everything. Like they defended him to the death in public, and then like when he fucked up, he just wanted to hide, right? And like, I mean, and when I talk about that, like there was the Bwipo situation, right? Was like it's just so unacceptable.
Yes,
right? Like
agreed.
So for people who don't know, basically he was having a private conversation with Bwipo where he basically hard flamed his teammates to somebody outside the team. That guy, for whatever stupid reason, like went public and talked about how his teammates were so shit, and like Hylissang had told them how shit his teammates were, and then he just sat there and just let it roll over, right? And then continued to play badly in game. And like, I mean, you know. Sure, I feel bad for his teammates. I feel bad for Vito and things like this, but I feel really bad for his coaching staff who basically lived and died by him, right?
Sure.
And basically, like the reason, if they had Stend right now, this Vitality team would be fucking good, right? But instead, they have Niski, role swapped, who, you know, he'll be good in the future, but he's still obviously not like a tier.
I like the way one of your actual fucking plot points for this season is like that Stend is like the sleeper OP fucking support player in the Galaxy, and no one else gets it except Peter. He's the only one who's got the fucking they live glasses and can see Stend for the true would-be mad life of Europe that he is. Like, I love it.
I mean, like, I think this guy is like the second best.
He's pretty good, but you are low-key hyping the fuck out of him. Okay, fair enough.
I think this guy is better than SkewMond. I'm gonna say that, and people will like hard play me. Like Callista's number one, but this guy's number two, and then it's like SkewMond back, right?
So he's like second rookie of the year, yeah.
No, I mean Callista's rookie, but like
no, I mean after Callista, that's pretty big though. Everyone else is picking up the fuck out of SkewMond. Okay, exactly. that's the title. Editor, there's the title. Stend better rookie than SkewMond. There you go.
SkewMond, yeah. I don't know, but anyway, like the thing is, the situation they're in now, right? Like, if you want to give your players freedom, you need to like trust that there is somebody in that team who will keep people in check, right? Like you can't have a team where you have 5 monkeys just running around like being monkeys, right? Like somebody needs to like keep the other guys in check. And if you have a team that is very, very structured and you have one monkey in the team, you know, like sometimes you need to tell the monkey to calm it down a bit. You know, I was working with Spice's Academy team once, and we had a player called Tearwolf who was literally like unshackled chaos to the end of the world. And like the other 4 players on his team were like the most structured. Right. You know, this was the team with Freeze, right? You know, who's like structure, step A, step B, step C, and then you have this like force of nature who cannot be contained by anything, you know, and you just have to like give them some agency, you know, to be that aggressive guy. But you need to have somebody to provide the structure, and if your force of chaos or your monkey isn't like listening to your structure guy, you have to like discipline him until he finally does, right? But I think that's the problem Vitality have right now, right? Which is that for whatever reason, and I couldn't tell you without knowing internally, the person who is supposed to provide the structure on that team either A, doesn't exist, or B, isn't being listened to, right? And, you know, I look at who the veterans on the team are. It's Kazi and it's Niski. Niski is normally somebody who does provide pretty good structure. He's capable of doing it, but he's learning a new role, so it's probably not that easy for him. Kazi is somebody who's, again, capable of doing it, but has never been the number one. Like, when Kazi was at his best, he was providing structure for a really, really aggressive shot caller like Humanoid to, like, be... You know, he was like the number 2. He was the Robin to Humanoid's Batman, right? Like in terms of the comms on that Madlands 2020 and I guess 2021 team. So they don't really have a Batman on that team, you know, and like maybe their Batman is too like fragile or something, right? So they need to reinforce that guy, right? And I don't know what's causing it, but it's very clear that on Vitality, again, nobody is saying, breathe in, calm down, reset. We're still like 5k gold ahead. We fucked up once. Let's not fuck up again. It's always so much of the time of Vitality. They're really good until they make a mistake. And then that mistake like snowballs into another mistake, into another mistake, into another mistake, because they keep trying to chase, they're like gamblers, they keep trying to chase their loss instead of just saying, okay, we made a mistake. We gave the enemy 2.5k gold. We're 7k gold ahead. Like, let's just reset and play the game from 3k gold ahead, right? I don't know what the solution for that is on Vitality right now. If I was guessing, I would say Linkus is probably the guy looking at the players that they have on the roster who needs to be the stabilizing force. But again, I haven't worked with Linkus in the past, so I don't know if that is who it is, or it has been Iski, right? It's one of those two guys, for sure.
Okay, luckily we can dance around this. We did technically start with the ugly point of Jensen, and not bad, and then we merged into his ugly point, but we're going to come back into the bad section. So Peter, what is your bad point?
My bad point is like, holy fuck, what are BrokenBlade and Caps doing this week? Like, oh my god, I've seen some like bad performances from G2, but like Caps, like I don't know how they can like. So you had G2 in the past where they would have these really bad best of one performances, normally against Rogue, and then people would joke about it, aha, it's G2 trolling, aha, it's just the best of one, it doesn't matter. But to be that bad consistently over 2 games, like the first game, okay, so early game wasn't that bad. I mean, first game, Caps was like running it, but enemy team was coming mid a lot, he's in a matchup where he has to at least attempt to contest the wave, or his champion's useless, his fillet is useless. So I kind of get it. Enemy team was mid better than his team was mid, so I kind of get why he's behind. But they both, in the mid game, they both had team fights where they're literally just running around without looking at where the bot lane is. And the worst situation I can remember, there is a team fight, I think it's on the 4th dragon. I think it may be on the 4th dragon, where Caps and BB and SkewMond, they're in the river, they're on blue side. Bot lane is behind the dragon pit. Hans Sammer's on Ezreal. He wants to play his fight slow. He wants to like have the team play around his cooldowns, and he's probably sitting there behind the dragon pit, looking up, and then his 2 solo laners and his jungler are just like running into enemy blue buff jungle, like getting picked. Like he's not even on the same screen as his teammates, and like it just showed a huge lack of focus. And I've seen this enough from the top teams in Europe that it concerns me a lot, because they don't care. Like G2 know they're going to make top 4 in playoffs. They know they have a first round bye. And they know that they've secured, they're in a position where it's almost impossible that they're not going to come top 4. So their focus is off. And this is a really, really bad habit to have. And it's a habit that I've seen from all of the top European teams. And it's even existed on teams, even when I was on a top European team, like coaching a top European team, right? Like, it was even like that. And this lack of discipline is really, really concerning. G2 will be fine. They're not going to lose, they're not going to miss out on top 6. But the fact that BB and Caps can run around like this, can in so many team fights, can get picked so many times, it rubs me the wrong way. Because obviously, who am I supporting this year? I'm supporting Koi because of Chocha. And they've just gifted BDS a free win for no reason. Obviously BDS played well to catch the throws, but they were really, really running it down in that series, and it's not something that is uncommon, and it's not something for Fnatic will do it at some point, KC will do it at some point. Koi, are they bad or are they doing it? It's hard to say, but yeah, that was a shocking performance from Caps and BB, and I'm sure they will be fine next week, but it just this week was so bad. It was so bad. It was shockingly bad. That's what I'm going to say.
What do you think, Jensen? Solos of G2?
I feel a slightly different take on it. I think that this is more of a, because I'm such a shill for BDS, right? And the way that they play the game, because I think that BDS plays textbook correct League of Legends. The jungle and support are connected, they're doing the correct setups, and they're playing how the Eastern teams would play from when they're behind and trying to make sure that their side lanes aren't perma-shafted all the time by overloading the map accordingly. And what I'm seeing from this is that my takeaway from this is I don't think BB and Caps had a absolute shocker of a series, right? It's not like they're just rounding it down at every single opportunity. The way I'm looking at it is that they're reaching a point in the game where it feels like they've just walked over other opponents who don't do the same defensive hygiene that BDS has in terms of making sure that they don't absolutely get picked apart by a Renekton just walking forward, starting somebody and having another person or two other people jump them at the same time, because they have numbers there and they're there to match you as BDS. So it reaches a point of time in the game where the opponents have not just gifted them the free win, and they actually have to, okay, now we have these compositions that aren't just straight up 5v5 AoE teamfight compositions. How do we close out the fight from here? The one that I'm thinking about that was really egregious is the one where BrokenBlade just, we're talking about like bad top lane TP flanks. That was just the exhibit A, where he just TPs at the banana bush and just dies to BDS. That was probably the most egregious one that comes to mind. But it's, if we were to disconnect, right, and compartmentalize what they were doing on the map activity and stuff like that, what I'm getting from this is that G2 has been walking over everybody else in scrims, and at some point when Romain inevitably posts the this is G2 scrim record and stuff like that, I wouldn't be very surprised if this week they won every single scrim, but against teams that don't have the proper defensive map hygiene.
Right.
Yeah, I can see it. So basically, like this is like a wake up call for G2, basically, right?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I can see it that way. I can see it that way. I mean, obviously, like, it looks very, very funny when it's Caps and BB, because, like, obviously we know Caps and BB aren't this bad. We know that they're going to be fine. Maybe not next week, but they'll be fine when it really, really matters. But yeah, I mean, for sure. So do you think it's just them, like, getting frustrated? Or do you think it's just them, like, they have these weaknesses, but they've never been exploited? Or do you think it's a lack of focus? Like, because it can be like, you could have a weakness you don't know about, or you can have a weakness that you... that hasn't been shown, right? No, sorry, a weakness you don't know about, or like something you do know about, but you need to focus hard to fix it, but you haven't need to focus, if that makes sense.
I would say it's a bit of a combination of both. I think that this is them going up against BDS. This is a team that will hang on over there, and it forces you got to close out the game properly. And if you don't get the practice and you don't get in the last few steps to get those steps in properly to secure the drakes and stuff like that, then but it's going to be tough. They're going for this 1-1-3, 1-4 setups, with BB always playing with lots of pressure on the cross map, and then they're looking to try and find lots of these options to pull their opponents apart on the map against a team like BDS that understands the map control game, where they don't just automatically fold to that. Then they actually got to close out the game properly. So it's revealed a part of the game that's missing. So I wouldn't say it's a weakness. I would just say it's a missing hole in their protocols, right? It's a missing hole in their protocols that they have yet to shore up.
I would just say the 1-1-3 setup they have failed at is against the fucking player, Jensen. Bro, they made this guy look like Xin Zhao was the most OP champion ever created in League of Legends. Like, how did they keep doing that over and over? Every time he walked in, they were like, oh my God, he's knocking me up. What is this? Like, that, bro, I know what you mean, Jensen. I put it this way. I think your take's not bad there. You're like theory craft. Because that looked like a team that just thought they were going to just walk through this game on, like, half asleep or something. Because they didn't adapt at all in this fucking series. Like, that particular game just lives rent-free in my brain because it was just them over and over again doing the same fight. And what's weird is, if you look how they drafted, surely the plan was just snowball the whole game and run over them in like 20 minutes. Like, what were they doing in this game? Like, I don't know, but that looked like they played on autopilot. And by the way, shout out to BDS for actually clapping them. Like, 1-1-3 had an awesome game. Like, look, I don't know how we got away with it, but fucking hell, it worked. It did work.
I mean, if throwing into enough, and the enemy team just assumes you're into, right? Like, I mean, if they think he's into and he like steps up and walks up, maybe they're like,
yeah. No, he baited them. He did. By the way, one thing as well, we haven't mentioned his name because, to be fair, we're mainly talking. I agree, this all and did play like shit for G2, but I also think this was a great series for why I don't care. Even when G2's at their best, they almost won the last split. Like people thinking they're really good. They've had games this split that looked like SkewMonds look awesome in some matches. One of the things I think they are going to unfortunately constantly have to circle back to every split that they don't win is the fucking Labrov Mickey X swap, because bro, that has been a game changer. Like Labrov himself does not peel in even vaguely the way I think that Hansama had dreamed of when he asked for that player. If that's really who Hansama asked for, like you have got to be careful what you wish for, mate. Because I'll tell you what, you might have thought Mickey X like inted, but mate, he was fucking dynamite in those mid games though. Like some of those fucking moves he could make in team fights was, and you do miss that in this team. Like I know it's not that I'm not making Labrov the main offender here, but I do notice that is clearly like missing in these fights, mate. Like I can tell there's times when they think like he's going to like peel or get something off it, he just doesn't get it done, mate. It's actually they're in the top
I just
spot.
want to
Go on.
I just want to chip in a little bit more on that. If I'm gonna say that the weakness of the LEC as a whole is in terms of team fighting, and if G2 is supposed to be one of the stronger teams in the LEC, I think the supports across the board in the LEC have not been doing a very good job in terms of knowing the job and doing the jobs in team fighting. And I think that the switch from Mickey X to Labrov has been very noticeable in the team fighting department.
That's fair. I would say Mickey is still best team fighting AD carry in the league.
Support.
Support.
No, you're right.
In the league?
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, right. My bad point is going to be very simple. You know, Peter, how you wait for someone to have a good game once. You're like, see, I said that guy is actually completely good. I do the opposite, Peter. I'm on my hate watch. What I do is I sit and I mark on the calendar and I wait for you to fuck up so I can finally like wreck you when you're actually a good player. So you know who I've actually picked for this week? Maybe it won't be that big of a surprise when I say it. I've actually picked my bad point for this week is fucking Elyoya from MKOI. Because here's the problem. One of the things I think I have to always be fair with, I've tried to do this over the years as I've like leveled my understanding of the industry up, is if you notice, I actually try to make part of my analysis of like team performance, for example, and how coaches and players play based on things like what resources did they have? Like, could they have signed top players in the offseason? Do they even work with the same quality of player, etc.? So similarly, if I judge Elyoya, bro, I can't just judge you like I was when we were talking about Sheo earlier, just a jungler who's put into a chair and told jungle, this is your team. Like the whole team, as far as we know, was almost handpicked by you. It's literally coached by your mate and owned by someone who's a mate of yours too. Like all these factors involved. So unfortunately, when you have a game like this, bro, as far as I can tell, you're not just the jungler. You're like the fucking god emperor jungler. Like you just are the ultimate shot caller captain. It's your team. Fucking even like the joke is they brought in a kid that just has hands to be like your fucking bodyguard. Like Jojo, just do what he says basically. Like when you have bad games like this, I think you actually just kill your team dead. They just have no chance to win. Like I do think when you're that, here's the thing, Peter. If they ever were number one team in the league, I would go the other way and say it actually means Elyoya's probably the MVP. You know what I mean? Like he must be having such insane. But it means when you have a really bad series like this, because I would bang on Jojo when he had bad individual lane stuff like that. This wasn't him, mate. This like Elyoya had a screamer for this one for me, mate. This was bad. And I do think he's a very talented player.
I mean, I know it's bad, Thorin, when you're the one criticizing him, because like
I'm a fan usually.
You've been Elyoya a lot,
I'm a fan.
You're like a huge Elyoya fan. But yeah, I felt this was really, really rough. Actually, Jensen, what did you think? What did you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a shock of a series from Elyoya when you're getting out jungle. And I felt that okay. So shout out to Linkus, right? I felt that there was this game he did like a full clear into two camps so that he had a very unnatural timing on bot lane. I thought that was good for him. And then that really set Elyoya behind. I think it was in the first game in that set. I don't recall what the exact setup was, but I recall like just noting down that this was the opponent jungle playing well and just abusing a timing in the bot lane. But it's really, it goes back to, if I'm just recalling the set, I recall Elyoya just having very low impact and him walking around getting caught, as well as very atrocious team fighting. So I think across the board, it's been a very poor showing from Elyoya. I don't really have too much to add to it, because I think this is really one of those, we saw a similar mid-season slump from Lions last year as well.
Right.
So is there something more systemic that's going on? And I'm a bit too far away from Europe to really try to even get a finger on the pulse as to what might be happening over there.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at their schedule. They have SK, Rogue, GX, Fnatic. Okay, I mean they're probably fine, but but definitely like Koi. I don't know, like this for sure. Like this is Elyoya's worst game of the year, for sure. I agree with that. Second thing I would say is that I always feel like Koi are a team that is quite fragile in that when they are in control, when they have tempo leads, when they can play their two lanes, when Jojo can and Mirwin can bluff without cost on the side lane, or bluff in the sense that they flip it for a wave, but if they get caught, like their team go the other side of the map and get a huge amount. I think Koi look like a really good team. I feel that Koi, when they get behind, are a team that is very, very fragile. They don't react well to their jungle being invaded. They don't react well to their bot lane being set behind. They don't react. They haven't been a team that is able to play safe and calm when their top lane, when Merwin is the one who has resources and is in a position to carry, right? They're normally a team that does really well when mid lane has resources, or specifically Alvaro has resources, or and is able to move. But yeah, this was a series that really showed how you can attack Koi, and I don't think every team in the league can do this. But I think a team like Fnatic or a team like KC will watch this series and learn a lot about how you can attack Koi in the early game. I will also say that their coach, like Elyoya's friend or the person he respects or something, he's on parental leave right now. So he's
fair enough. Okay.
He's on paternity leave, but obviously it's noticeable that the team lack this guy. So I don't know Melzet too well, but I know that he has this reputation in the Spanish community as being literally the guy who will pull out a belt or yell at you, or put you in solitary isolation and yell at you for some amount of time until if you misbehave. And definitely this team lacks discipline. This team is really, really lacking in discipline, and Vitality is the first team that were fully able to punish. So that's what I would say on that.
Okay. Right, technically, we already did Jensen's ugly, so we have to now go to Peter's ugly. So what is your ugly, Peter?
Okay, well, my ugly, is last week I said KC needed to make a statement, right? Because they almost lost to Heretics, and I said this week they're against GX, they need to make a statement game against GX, and I read the statement that they said against GX, and the statement is, this team is a team that is exhausted, this team is a team that needs a break, and this team is a team that, I don't know how many weeks they've got towards playoffs, but they need to take a day to do a spa day or go play football or do something else, because this team looks mentally exhausted. And I think it was either Kalist or Yike who did an interview that was on the front page of Reddit, right? Where they said, we're playing at 30 to 40% of our capability right now. But didn't say it in terms of, we can be so much better. It's we're playing at 30 to 40%, and you read what's behind between the lines. And this is a team, they've been going at high intensity for the entirety of Winter Split. They went international, which is going to fucking exhaust you. They played a high emotional first stand tournament, right? So it was all condensed into a week, but they went through a lot of emotions. They basically looked like they were going to go 0-4 at one point. Then they suddenly got better, and then they went and played in the finals, and that kind of stuff will emotionally drain you. And I don't know if this team has had the chance to properly recover, because right now they don't look like they are. They look like they're surviving on instincts and team fight knowledge to get into to just win games.
They've had a lot of close series for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to even lose a game against GX is not the best. And now that I've seen them have two series like this against teams that should be lower in the table, that they should be comfortably beating, like Heretics and GX, I really, really worry for this team, because the what I'm seeing is not KC are bad. It's KC are exhausted, and this is natural for a team with this many rookies 4 months into the season, when you haven't had a break between the splits. You've been at high intensity non-stop for 4 months. I don't care what people say, you cannot be at high intensity for 4 months. Even LPL players and LCK players, right? They're not they're high intensity for 1.5 months, and then that's why you see sometimes teams lose ridiculous a game in a best of three somewhere here, right? Because they've allowed themselves to drop that intensity. But I don't think KC have. And if you try to do it for 4 months, it's going to really fuck you up. When things really matter, when you need to find that extra gear, and that really, really worries me. So yeah, so they had a statement series. They still won the series, right? But the statement that I'm seeing is like break low intensity so that they can recover, or else they're not going to MSI. It's that simple, right? If they play like this, G2 and Fnatic go to MSI. That simple.
What do you think, Jensen?
Oh, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of KC. I think this is a very good case of team that will be strong domestically. That I know they're decent success internationally, right? But it's one of those where it usually it's got strong laners. Killers is really strong. Their solo laners are pretty good. I think Vladdy turns out he was really the true gem of the mid lane. That came up from the rookie crop from last year, and I think that they have a set of solid players that play lane to power or above power generally, and they're one of the best team fighting teams, and that's a very good recipe for success domestically. But whether this is going to be the next G2 that's going to be someone who can compete with the Asian teams, technically they did at the what's the name of the thing called? The first stand, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but I'm not looking at this and thinking that this is going to be the next coming of G2 that might make the finals or even win Worlds or MSI, right? So
Yes.
I'm not very high on this team. I think that Targamas is someone that they're winning in spite of Targamas and the way that he's playing. So there's definitely some holes in it, and it's just that the rest of Europe is not good enough to punish them just yet. And even if they're good enough to polish certain elements of it, their team fighting is just way above where everybody else is at the moment.
This is why when they had the week when they played, let me think, maybe it was the Koi series I'm thinking of. I think it was the Koi series, the first one. I remember watching that and being like, fuck, if they think they can get away with this, like they're going to be dead if they go to MSI. Like this will never work again. Like if you give some of these leads to other teams, they'll just kill you dead. Like, so I think it's crazy how they've played as a team overall. Like the funny thing is they have won most of the series, but the amount of series where like it goes 3 games or they almost even lose in the 3rd game is fucking nuts. Like essentially, if you just made the skill level of all the players in the LEC equal, they'd have lost like, I think like most of their series, bro. They're all like half of them or something. Like they wouldn't be in this position they are now, which is they're still hanging on to like maybe they're the best team secretly and they'll get it together in the playoffs. Like, were you going to say something, Peter?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the thing I was going to say is that I just was looking at the LEC schedule and I've noticed they don't have a game next weekend. So that's a new thing from the schedule.
Right.
So basically, they played on Saturday. So I mean, if I was KC GM or coach, I would be like, take 4 days off.
Yeah.
Like literally, just take 4 days off, go and refresh properly, and like come back fresh for the. I think it's their home stand the weekend after.
Right.
So maybe it's this because they have the home stand for KC and for Koi. So maybe they don't have a week. They don't have a game this week because they're going to have like 2 games for their home stand or something like that. So that's perfect timing for KC. But yeah, sorry. That's what I was...
No, by the way, what I'll do is I'll tie this to, it's actually an area I think in League of Legends, no one has ever nailed how to actually give people time off to not make them burned out. Like what's funny is in my game of Counter-Strike, it's easy because since you choose to attend events around the world, what you do is when you've had like too much success or someone's burned out, you just obviously skip an event or something. You just say, look, we can't attend that one, or this guy needs to have a break or whatever. And I also think in a weird way, there's a component to traveling internationally in an open circuit that actually helps you mentally reset, which is you're in different countries. Like you leave the country where it went badly and it went bad. And also, by the way, the tournament's way shorter. Like if you fuck up a CS tournament, you fuck up the tournament 2 or 3 days in, and then all of a sudden, you got a few days to think about it, but you also have a whole bunch of days when you're traveling and coming back. Then you've got the mental reset of a new event in a new place. I'm starting at square one again. I think the hardest thing, in my opinion, because I think you're seeing this right now, by the way, actually in English football, where they've expanded out. There's too many, if people don't know, as well as having a million European competitions, they now have all those like Nations League shit. And like if you're playing like Africa, you go to AFCON every couple of years. They've got too many games in football, basically, and it's making like teams for real burn out. And my prediction, by the way, is in football, they will start doing what they do in the NBA, where you just do what you call load management, and you just rest people. And what you'll do is, when you're like Man City and you play against a bad team, you'll just rest like 2 of your starters. Even though they could play, they're available. And back in the day, they would be in the game to, score goals and stuff, you'll do that just to give them time. So basically, one thing I would say is this, is I can tell you when I've been on the like open circuit in Counter-Strike working as an analyst, and I've gone and done these long days where you're away for a whole week, which is comparable to being like what KC did. You've just like won the first split, you were in every fucking series, then you went to the international play, then you come back. I can tell you, if someone works a normal job, it's not like a normal supermarket job where you just need the weekend off. Bro, you need like a full week reset after that to have a chance. Like if you, because I've done this before, you've probably all done it as well when you've traveled to Worlds and stuff. When you come back, you're thinking in your brain, I only need a day or two, and then, book me in on Wednesday or something. No, mate, you will feel worse on Wednesday. You'll still be dead. You'll be like, once you start to recover, it's like your body's like, bro, we need to like fucking go in a hyperbolic time chamber or something. Like, I need to recover from this shit. Like, I need like a full reset. So I think the problem you have in League, and this is why, by the way, I always have mad respect for the veterans when it's like the T1s of the world that are in every international tournament. It's like, bro, you get so few breaks in your year, it is crazy. Because I've always said, if you're simultaneously a top team in your own region, so you're super active there, and you go internationally, it means not only do you not get a break on the calendar, but you're always incentivized to grind. Like, if you're on top, you grind to stay on top because who wants to give up the lead? And if you're behind, you have to grind to catch up. It's like you never get a break. So I think actually the league system we run now, this is because this is a team with two rookies in. I think it's too brutal, mate. Like, I don't think these guys they could like you're saying, Jensen, the idea they could be the team from winter split, and at the end of summer they're still going to be fucking fresh as a daisy. Like, yeah, league, like, no, they're going to look like, like when people become the president of America and they're like, look like they've aged 20 years after like one term. That's what it's going to be like in KC if they make all the finals points and go to MSI as well, and then go to work, mate. By the time it comes to World, they are going to be burnt to a crisp. Like, some of these guys are going to be cooked, and I don't blame them, because I have to say, this might sound harsh, but there's a reason why a lot of really great veteran players in League sort of are a bit cynical, Peter. Notice there's players, we all know them, who are like legendary for like taking part of a split off. By the way, I even think some of the Asians do it. I think Canyon used to do that in the regular split. He'd be just like, I'm going to be in the playoffs anyway, I'm Canyon. He would just fuck around in the regular season, be all three. I definitely know, obviously, the classic ones with my boys, Soaz, people like that, Perks. Like, they definitely have weeks they just phoned in. They were like, they're almost doing like the soft version of, I'm taking a break. I'm going to turn up and collect my check and play the games, but I'm taking a break this week. Like, I actually think this is a bigger topic. You guys are coaches. What do you think of this? Because I do think in League in the West, like, we haven't cracked this, mate. People definitely do go through this. Like, it's why this insane, like, MSI hangover thing's been a real thing forever. Rift Rival's a real thing forever. What do you think about this burnout factor?
Do you want to go first, Jensen?
Sure. I think there's a few unexplored ideas over here. The first is the concept of active recovery, right? Like, other things that you can do at the same time to kind of like refresh your brain or get a different perspective on it. I actually thought that being in a collegiate system, so in my last year of coaching coaching professionally, I was working with a collegiate system in the US, and I thought it was really interesting, right? Where the players would go for classes, then they would finish their other school classes, they would have a social life, and then they would be able to come back and then be able to do League of Legends itself. I thought that was a very interesting way to be able to spread out the load, because it's the type of thing where once you're burnt out, it's too late, right? Like, no amount of break is gonna is gonna save
it's
it.
definitely one of those things where like preventative behavior is way better than the cure afterwards. Yes, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing where if you are able to change your environment up enough, if you're able to see things enough, and I think it's a question of there's two probable factors with regards to this. One is engagement levels. So how much of it is players that are engaged with the game. One of the questions I always like to ask players when I do one-on-ones is, when was the last time you dreamt of League of Legends, right? It doesn't have to be a good dream. It can be a nightmare or whatsoever, because you can interpret it. Because if your subconscious is still focused on League of Legends, it's going to appear in your dreams, right? Yeah. And if they're still very engaged, then that's a good sign. But when they're not engaged and then you see them going through the slog, you can see these sort of things happening with them. And then that's when you would start to have these as be a little bit of red flags, because they're not so much engaged, but they're just going through the cycle. And then that's when I think that it's one of the major flags where I would say that this is a player at risk of burnout, right? Where they don't feel very engaged, but they're still putting in the crazy amount of hours. And then that's where frustration can start to bubble up quite a fair bit. And that's where the second factor is the frustration and harassment factor, right? And harassment can come in the form of pressures from outside, which is why, especially for the Asian teams, when they go to these international events, we have seen what the ultras are like, right? And I think KC is another team where they have very crazy ultras as well. I'm not sure if it's like the Asian teams where the team does badly, they go in there and ask the players to go and do unspeakable things to themselves and stuff like that, or is it going to be more like it's us and then we're going to
by the way, if people don't know, they're so insane, the nutter fans in China, that they to this day on the Hooper ratings they punish TES now in the LPL for what they did at first stand. So like when they even have a good game now, they meme them and say they had bad scores even though they win the series and they're the best thing in the LPL. Like these fans are fucking hardcore over there, bro. It's fucking it's some hardcore shit, I'm telling you. Keep going anyway.
So there's these like harassment factors that can come into play as well that can contribute to the burnout factor, right? So one is lack of engagement and then the harassment factor, and then the kind of keeping tabs onto these sort of things, and probably where KC is at, you can see where the harassment factor is a thing, especially if you start to lose games, because it's one of those things where if you're winning, you can keep telling yourself that everything is fine, but the moment that the losses start to happen, the moment there's a new patch or whatsoever, and you start to need to, okay, we need to do some major leg work to rework these portions of our game, because I think Void Grab's changes about to change or something like that, or there's a new champion in the game that has 17 abilities or something like that, right? You never know with Riot these days, and they got to do all these type of things, and if you're in the position and you already feel that you're so taxed out, you're so capped out, it can result in burnout happening, and you won't realize that until it has hit you.
And I mean, to be clear, like after MSI, the gap between the gap between the last game of the final first stand and the first game of LEC, there was 12 gap days. 12 gap days. Okay, so one of those days you're just going to be recovering. One of those days you're traveling. Then there's a media day, like that all the LEC teams have to do. So where's the recovery coming, right? Like, because normally a preseason is 2 weeks, right? Minimum preseason 2 weeks, sometimes preseason 4 weeks, right? Because they're three game days, right? So so it's a shorter preseason. There's no recovery, and I mean, let me put it this way: people could say, "Oh, they're not really burnt out. They're winning all their games and things like this." If you go watch the performance is really, really obvious. It's super obvious. You look at where the guys are in solo queue. Like, these are guys that were, they had all 5 players in the top 10. You have, Kalist is still there, but like the others are top 30, 50, 90, something like this, right? It's obvious from somebody who's watched esports for a long time and knows what's going on. Like, it doesn't mean that they can't recover, but what I will say is, if they're spending the next 2 weeks grinding before their what's it called? I don't want to when they play in the KC Stadium, like it's
first stand or home stand.
Home stand.
I think that's what you call it.
If they're spending, if they're spending the next 2 weeks grinding non-stop without a proper break before their home stand in order to put the best performance on, it's going to look rough, right? Like, I mean, this is a team that very, very clearly needs like 4 days off, right? Or 3 days off. But we'll see if they get it. Like, I wasn't too sure before now, because sometimes rookies have a greater tolerance because everything is new, everything is exciting. So I was like, okay, the Heretics game, maybe it's just a one-off. But now that I've seen the GX series, like, it's really, really clear, right? That this is an issue. And we'll see how they manage it. Like, because, you can always have good players. You can always have good strategic prep. But now is when we're going to learn, because I think we had Nightshare on or a couple of weeks ago where he was talking about the support system within the org of KC compared to Fnatic, right? And I would say now we learn what the rest of the KC support system provides. Now we're going to see how good is their sports psychologist, how good is their like performance coach if they have it. We're going to learn how good those staff are, because at this point it's out of game stuff that is going to make the difference between whether this team goes to MSI.
Yeah. By the way, my theory is because everyone does it. Everyone keeps thinking of first stand as MSI. There's 2 reasons why. One, it's just the first international tournament, but it's also because the format's basically the old MSI. That's the worst part about it. It's in your brain. It even reminds you of every MSI before the bloody double Olymp thing. It's basically the same. And also, I always used to be a critic of that format. Here's how you know that format sucks. Because when you watch first stand, you're like, it's not really that satisfying. This used to be MSI for like fucking 10 years or something. Like, it was always too fucking limited with not enough teams and not enough proper matches. We all know that. Anyway, the last point of the show is going to be, it's rare I do this, boys. I don't try to veer into the whole like LS draft world or the thing where you're on Reddit and you're just critiquing some pro player. Why did he play that champion like that? I'd have done this in my gold. I hate that shit normally, right? But I do want you two, as experts, to give me some thoughts on this. You just referenced the game. In game 3 of KCorp against GX, by the way, another great example of a game where like KCorp just wants to lose these games but accidentally wins them anyway. And so, oh well, I guess we just have to be top of the league. Bro, I want your take on this fucking Jackie's mid lane Akali pick, because it's a double whammy, right? One, he is actually picking for real, Jensen. He is picking Akali. Listen, he's dope on Akali. He's always been a very good player. But he is picking it into Maokai, Braum, and Renekton. So already, like, enjoy that game. Like, I get in his mind, he's probably like, I'm going to kill Kog'Maw. You're not, by the way. And then secondly, in this game, he just builds loads of Haunting Geysers. So I want to know, what do you think? Because my problem is this. I've never been a big GX, like, hyper. But I do like Jackie's. I do think he's a sick player. He has pop-off potential. But in my opinion, if you're in that team, the number one goal is draft this guy a playable fucking champion so he has agency to do something. Like, this looks to me, I want your take, because he must have presumably picked that he wanted this. This looks like a nightmare fuel game. Like, I don't know how are you supposed to play the game on this one? What do you think? What do you think, Jensen?
I actually felt that he played those fights very poorly.
Okay.
I actually felt that there's certain points of times where the combos...
He definitely button bashed a bit, put it that way. He looked like he was panicked, mate. Yeah. He looked a bit panicked.
And it's one of those where there are certain scenarios where Kalist should have been dead, right? The Akali combo, if it was clean, if that was Knight playing, heck, if it was Dolan B playing the Akali, it is a dead Kog'Maw. And I remember my impression watching the game. I haven't seen an Akali mess up that many fights ever since it was who was the mid laner before APA played for Team Liquid?
Oh, it was Harry.
I don't recall. Harry, right? Like, sorry. I
Dead now, of course.
I don't want to call people like that, but yeah, it's one of those where it feels like this guy is not very comfortable playing this champion, and that's where I'm starting to wonder: is he necessarily, does he live up to the hype, right? Okay. And watching the game, it feels like it's a no. This is not Knight, this is not Dolan B. I mean, those are very big names, right? But even say like someone like Cream probably would have gotten the kills in those scenarios that he had. I think his team had the setup to do it. I think Akali was picked in the situation, not necessarily to crush the team fights against the Braum, the Maokai, and stuff like that. It's fixed. So it goes back to my point about executing the 0-3-2 setups, right? Where you are playing these champions that are very strong on the side. You should always have the side lanes pushed in, and despite your opponent being able to be first through mid and getting set up on the Drake, you should be able to then coordinate the flanks properly. And it didn't help that the rest of his team didn't really know how to set up those team fights accordingly for him. Where I think this was the game I was talking about, where the Sejuani was walking in from the same angle as the Akali. You don't need the Sejuani to be coming in from the same angle as you, right? So that's where I felt that the team wasn't doing him favors as well with regards to that. So mechanically could have been better. Setup wise, I feel that this team is just all over the place right now at the moment. And I think there's just so many things on fire at GX right now. It's really tough to pinpoint it down to like, this is one thing itself. Item build wise, I'm always a believer that like item builds are very rarely the reason why you lose a game.
Yep. I mean, what I'll say here is so what's GX's issue? GX's issue is that they can't team fight. Like they cannot flank properly in a team fight, and the reason. So I'm not going to say Jackie's played well, like because I don't think he played well on Akali, but he had. When I was watching this game 3 against KC, I was reminded of I can't remember whether it was first or second game, but there was a game he was like 11-1 or 11-2 on Ari last week against SK. Yeah. He should have like 1v9 carried the entire game on a champion that has... Okay, so Ari is slightly different from Akali because of the flank angles, but basically both of these want to come in from unconventional angles, slightly separate from the rest of the team. Like they want to come in from, like Akali can either come in from the opposite side, but they essentially want to come in from like a 90-degree angle to the fight. Like I wish I had like a whiteboard here where I could draw. But basically they want to come in from unconventional angles in the fight. And the timing of his flanks, the angle that he's engaging in were problematic to me, but also how they were playing around his side lane pressure. Like, they shouldn't be fighting unless they have perfect setup. and they should get perfect setup because they have Akali this week and they had Ari last week, right? Which are a very fed Ari, right? Which are champions that should be able to push inside. Maybe they can't hit the tower, but they can push it, and then when they rotate, you can go and play for your first setup, and then you go back to your side lane, repush, and now you have good setup, and then you repeat. Essentially, you do two phases, right? The first rotation is for your setup. The second rotation is for your fight, right? And they weren't doing that properly at all, which means that I don't think that they're capable of playing this kind of style right now, which is a massive, massive problem because that means the only way they can team fight is full 5v5 team fight comps. But they have a top laner who that's not his strength. Right, they have comms issues because obviously Noah and Jun are not like fluent in English, so they can't 5v5 team fight. They can't play side lanes properly. Like, to me, this is a problem. The problem is, and the problem is not just that Jackie's is playing poorly individually in fights. It's that Jun and Isma are not playing for his side. They're just not playing to get in rotation. And Closer was doing a little bit of this last split, but it was still a problem last split. So I think that it's difficult to see how GX are going to win. Yeah, games. That's what I would say.
That would wrap it there, boys. See you next week for the next episode of the Best Damn League Show.